because you were snookered by the biggest liars in history, and you're now trying to backtrack on those lies because you know that your reputation was shot the moment that you allowed Prince Harry and Meghan Markle to try and bring down the British royal family with a tissue of untruths.
March 7th, 2021. It was billed as the interview of the decade, a television event that completely stopped the world in its tracks. 2 hours of primetime broadcasting that sent immediate shockwaves across the Atlantic, shook the absolute foundation of a 1,000-year-old monarchy, and instantly cemented Prince Harry and Meghan Markle as Hollywood's ultimate victims. At the dead center of it all was Oprah Winfrey. She was the undisputed queen of daytime television, the master of the deeply intimate, hard-hitting celebrity tell-all. For decades, her credibility was bulletproof. By sitting in that garden and nodding sympathetically, she lent her massive, untarnished global influence to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. In the eyes of millions, her presence alone validated every single claim, every tear, and every unverified accusation that crossed their lips. It was a masterclass in media manipulation, and at the time, it looked like a total victory. But that was then. Today, the narrative has spectacularly collapsed. The public tide has violently turned, and the media titan who engineered this global spectacle is suddenly scrambling. The pristine facade of that California garden interview has been utterly shattered. Oprah Winfrey, a woman who has controlled her own narrative for 40 years, is backpedaling. She is facing a level of backlash she has never experienced in her career, and the desperation is starting to show. Thanks to leaked, unedited tapes and raw backstage audio, the mask has finally slipped. The world is waking up to the reality that they were sold a heavily sanitized script, not an honest conversation.
I did anything they told me to do. Of course I did, because it was also through the lens of, and we'll protect you. So even as things started to roll out in the media that I didn't see, but my friends would call me and say, Meg, this is really bad. Because I didn't see it, I'd go, don't worry, I'm being protected. I believed that.
This is no longer just a story about a bitter royal family feud or two disgruntled ex-royals complaining in a mansion. This is the anatomy of a catastrophic PR disaster. It is the real-time story of how a legendary broadcaster got caught playing puppet master and is now brutally, publicly disowning the very monsters she helped create, just to save her own rapidly decaying historical legacy. She knows exactly what is on the line, and she knows that the truth is completely out of her control. The walls are closing in on the Sussex brand, and Oprah sees the writing on the wall. She is executing a ruthless exit strategy to distance herself from the radioactive fallout of the biggest television lie in modern history. To truly understand why Oprah Winfrey is in full-blown panic mode today, you have to look back at exactly how this trap was set and how the public was actively deceived. For years, audiences around the world were fed a very specific, carefully constructed lie about the 2021 interview. We were relentlessly told by the network that this was a raw, unfiltered, and fiercely journalistic endeavor. Oprah explicitly told her CBS viewers that absolutely no subject was off-limits, implying to the global audience that she was holding the Sussexes' feet to the fire, asking the tough questions, and acting as an impartial seeker of the truth. That was the selling point. That was the hook. But the unedited audio and the raw transcripts tell a completely different, frankly embarrassing story. When you strip away the dramatic primetime editing and the somber background music, what you are left with is not journalism. It is a highly choreographed performance. Listen to Oprah herself in her own words, peel back the curtain on how this so-called bombshell expose was actually just a carefully negotiated, deeply cynical corporate transaction right from the start.
They didn't know, obviously, anything that I was going to ask them, but I had said to them ahead of time, I'm going to try to cover everything. This interview took 3.5 hours. And as is always the case for me, I want it to be a win-win for you.
A win-win for you. Let that exact phrase sink in for a moment. Real journalism, the kind that exposes powerful institutions and actually demands the truth, is never, ever designed to be a win for the subject being interviewed. A journalist's fundamental job is to represent the viewer, to challenge glaring inconsistencies, to demand hard receipts, and to push back when a story doesn't add up. But Oprah openly admits right here on tape that she abandoned all journalistic integrity before the cameras even started rolling. She approached this highly volatile geopolitical family crisis like a celebrity publicist handling a red carpet rollout. She promised Harry and Meghan a safe, undisputed space to air their grievances without any fear of pushback. Think about the sheer logistics of this production. The raw, unedited tape ran for 3.5 hours. That is 210 minutes of continuous recording. That massive block of footage was then meticulously sliced, diced, sanitized, and rearranged down to an 85-minute primetime broadcast. In that dark editing bay, crucial context was deliberately stripped away. Any potential awkwardness or contradictory statements were entirely removed. What was left on the cutting room floor tells the real story. The final product wasn't an interview at all. It was a weaponized PR package, delivered directly to millions of living rooms under the incredibly deceptive guise of an objective, hard-hitting inquiry. Oprah promised to cover everything, but she only covered what fit the Sussex narrative. And the sharpest critics in the media landscape know exactly what they are looking at. They see right through the slick production value.
So she's
that's
admitted
her
that she wasn't doing any type of journalistic investigation. She was doing
I'm
PR.
going to guide you.
Yeah.
That's exactly what she's saying there. It's going to be a win-win. Don't you worry. You just say the stuff and I'll help lead you. You know, that's why she didn't ask any of the questions. She knew exactly what she was doing in that. Oprah is not a stupid woman. It was designed to be that way. That's why when they said there was a member of the royal family that was racist, and they turned around and said, oh, we're not going to say who it is, because they knew that that put a blanket accusation over every member of the royal family.
Taz hits the absolute nail on the head here, and it is a point that cannot be overstated. Oprah Winfrey is not a victim in this scenario. She is a highly calculated media billionaire who built an empire by understanding exactly how television manipulates human emotion. She has spent 40 years mastering the art of the interview. She didn't accidentally forget to ask for proof when Meghan made her most outrageous claims. She didn't accidentally let the Sussexes dominate and twist the narrative into knots. She built the stage, handed them the microphone, and actively, willingly steered the conversation to ensure maximum dramatic impact and absolute devastation. She helped them launch a nuclear media strike on the British royal family, knowing full well she was providing the necessary air cover to make it believable.
It was designed to be exactly that way.
It was a massive, record-breaking ratings victory for CBS, a massive, billion-dollar branding win for Harry and Meghan, and a massive cultural flex for Oprah herself. She got exactly what she wanted out of that garden sit-down. Which brings us to the multi-million-dollar question that unravels this entire saga. If this was a mutually beneficial, highly lucrative PR arrangement from minute one, if she knew exactly what she was doing and was in total control of the narrative, why is the undisputed queen of talk suddenly running for the hills? Why is she desperately trying to rewrite history and convince the world that she had no idea what she was saying? What exactly is on those tapes that has Oprah Winfrey terrified of her own creation? The answer lies in the permanence of the internet. The public didn't just move on, they started digging. They started comparing the couple's contradictory statements over the years, and all roads led back to Oprah's complicity. Now that the Sussex brand is viewed as toxic and unreliable, Oprah's association with them is no longer an asset. It is a massive liability. She realizes that her historic legacy, carefully curated over decades, is now permanently shackled to a couple who couldn't keep their own story straight. And when a billionaire's legacy is threatened, loyalty goes out the window. She is cutting the cord, and she is doing it on camera. Every historic television interview has that one defining moment, a single, perfectly crafted soundbite that transcends the broadcast, goes completely viral, and burns itself into the cultural memory forever. For the 2021 sit-down, that moment arrived when Oprah leaned in, looked Meghan Markle dead in the eye, and delivered a line so dramatic it could have been written by a Hollywood screenwriter. She asked the Duchess if she was silent or silenced. It was the ultimate dramatic crescendo. That three-word phrase became the entire marketing hook for the CBS broadcast. It painted a horrifying picture of a trapped, gagged, and bullied woman held hostage by an archaic institution. It was the absolute pinnacle of Meghan's victimhood narrative, validated and immortalized by the most trusted interviewer on the planet. But fast forward to today, and that iconic, award-winning soundbite has become a massive albatross around Oprah Winfrey's neck. As the public has systematically dismantled the Sussex's claims, proving inconsistency after inconsistency, Oprah has found herself cornered. And her reaction to being cornered reveals exactly how she operates when her reputation is under fire. She doesn't double down. She doesn't defend her supposed friends. She executes a brutal, public backtrack. Listen to how the Queen of Talk desperately tries to erase history, and notice how quickly she throws Meghan's most famous narrative squarely under the bus.
And then I was silent.
Were you silent or were you silenced?
The latter.
Okay, very nice. I don't think I've done it since. I don't know where the hell that came from. Whoop. Okay. I wanted to be clear because was she silenced? Were people telling her not to talk? That's why I said that. I said it for clarification because I didn't want later to hear, well, no, it wasn't that. It really was that I was silenced. They wouldn't let me talk. So it was all for clarification.
Bullshit, Oprah. You've literally just said what you should have asked. Were people telling her not to talk? You didn't ask that. You didn't ask that. You played into a lie. And as a result, your legacy is now trashed, and you know it. Trashed.
Let's break down the sheer absurdity of Oprah's defense here, because it is a masterclass in panic. I don't know where the hell that came from. She actually expects the public to believe that her most famous, heavily promoted, trailer headlining question was just a random slip of the tongue that magically made it into the final cut. Remember, this was not a live broadcast. This was a meticulously sculpted, heavily edited, multi-million-dollar production. She had absolute final approval over every single frame and every single syllable that went to air. If she truly didn't know where it came from, it would have been left on the cutting room floor. Instead, it was the centerpiece of the entire global PR campaign. But now that the narrative has soured, Oprah is trying to retroactively rewrite her own intent. By claiming she was just asking for clarification, she is completely shifting the burden of the lie onto Meghan. She is effectively saying, I didn't declare she was silenced. I was just trying to figure out what her story was. It is a brilliant, ruthless, and incredibly calculated disowning of her former star witness. But as Dan pointed out with lethal precision, her excuse completely exposes her failure as a journalist. If Oprah actually wanted clarification, she would have asked the direct, factual question, who exactly was telling you not to talk? Name the people. But she didn't do that. Instead, she offered Meghan a multiple-choice script prompt. Silent or silenced? Isn't an interview question. It is a dramatic device designed to elicit maximum sympathy without requiring a single shred of actual evidence. Oprah played right into the lie because it made for incredible television. Now, the bill for that incredible television has come due, and Oprah is scrambling to avoid paying it. She is realizing that the public is no longer blinded by her celebrity halo. They're looking at the raw tape, and they're seeing a media giant who abandoned her integrity for a ratings grab. And for a woman whose entire billion-dollar empire is built on the concepts of authenticity, spiritual truth, and deep connection, this is a catastrophic business crisis.
Oprah has had to backtrack, and I appreciate that it was subtle, but I think she's embarrassed. I think she's deeply, deeply embarrassed, and she wants to change the legacy of this interview.
Embarrassment. That is the true driving force behind this entire unraveling. For a billionaire media titan who has spent her life being universally revered, embarrassment is a completely foreign, deeply toxic emotion. Oprah Winfrey does not do embarrassment. She does not do failure. And she certainly does not allow her historic legacy to be permanently tethered to a couple of exiled royals who have turned themselves into an international punchline. Oprah thought she was sitting down with the next Princess Diana. She thought she was facilitating a monumental, history-altering conversation that would define the decade and earn her a permanent place in the geopolitical history books. Instead, She got manipulated into hosting a highly produced, wildly inaccurate grievance session that has aged like milk left out in the California sun. She bet her flawless reputation on the credibility of Harry and Meghan, and she lost. And now, we're watching the frantic, messy cleanup operation. She is trying to change the legacy of the interview by pretending she was just an innocent, confused bystander who accidentally stumbled into a royal crossfire. But the unedited audio doesn't lie, and it exposes something even worse than her lack of journalistic rigor. As she tries to dig herself out of this hole, the tapes reveal a staggering level of hypocrisy, not just from the Sussexes, but from Oprah herself. There is a supreme, almost poetic irony in watching Oprah Winfrey try to navigate the fallout of this interview. As she desperately attempts to distance herself from the silent or silenced narrative, the unedited tapes reveal another fascinating layer to her shifting stance. Oprah isn't just backpedaling on her own journalistic failures. She is actively throwing subtle, devastating shade at the very core of Harry and Meghan's public brand, their relentless, completely contradictory demand for privacy. For a couple who famously stepped down from royal duties to escape the harsh glare of the media, they have spent the subsequent years orchestrating Netflix docuseries, publishing tele-memoirs, and executing highly publicized media blitzes. The public saw through the hypocrisy immediately, dubbing it the worldwide privacy tour. But what happens when the woman who gave them their biggest platform starts calling out that exact same hypocrisy? Listen very closely to how Oprah describes her own approach to fame. She isn't just talking about herself here. This is a masterclass in passive-aggressive Hollywood dismantling.
Well, how foolish of me to think I could go to Marshall Fields on a Saturday and not get stopped. And so that's the way I started approaching it. Like, if you don't want to be bothered, stay home. If you want to keep your privacy, then don't go out. If you want to go to a restaurant and you want to have, you're having out to dinner with Stedman and Stedman was like, why people are coming up all the time, then let's stay home and eat. And so that has been my approach.
If you don't want to be bothered, stay home. It is such a simple, brutally logical statement, delivered by a woman who actually understands the uncompromising mechanics of global fame. Oprah Winfrey has been one of the most recognizable faces on the planet for 4 decades. She knows better than anyone that fame is a transaction. If you court the spotlight, if you demand the massive multi-million-dollar deals and the primetime specials, you forfeit your right to absolute anonymity. By weaponizing this incredibly blunt, common-sense advice on tape, Oprah is essentially holding up a mirror to the Sussexes' entire post-royal grievance campaign and laughing at it. She is invalidating their core complaint. She is telling the audience, and indirectly telling Harry and Meghan, that their media circus is self-inflicted. And the commentators breaking down this leaked tape caught the exact translation of Oprah's diplomatic shade.
She turns around and says, if you want your privacy, here's a novel idea. Why don't you actually just stay indoors and not call the paps? That's pretty much what she was addressing there. But
Taz translates the corporate speak perfectly. Oprah knows the game. She knows that the paparazzi don't just magically appear at perfectly timed, highly styled charity outings or remote polo matches. She knows how the Hollywood machine operates because she helped build it. By leaning into this narrative, Oprah is executing a highly strategic pivot. She is subtly aligning herself with the general public's exhaustion over the Sussexes' constant complaining. It is a brilliant PR survival tactic. If she can position herself as someone who also finds their behavior ridiculous and entitled, she hopes the public will forgive her for giving them the microphone in the first place. She is sacrificing their credibility to salvage her own relatable, down-to-earth image. But while she tries to laugh off their hypocrisy regarding the paparazzi, the reality of what actually transpired during that 3.5-hour recording session reveals a much darker, far more destructive dynamic. When the dust finally settles on the 2021 Oprah interview, it will not be remembered as a victory for anyone involved. It will be studied as a catastrophic collision of massive egos, engineered grievances, and unprecedented media manipulation. The tapes don't just expose Oprah's lack of journalistic integrity, they expose the stark, deeply uncomfortable reality of the interview's actual power dynamic. We were told this was a united front, a husband and wife bravely stepping forward to speak their truth against an oppressive institution. But the raw commentary and analysis of these tapes paint a completely different picture. They reveal a calculated hijacking. They show exactly how a fractured family dynamic was exploited for a massive, unrepeatable financial payout, with one person acting as the undeniable ringleader.
No, what Meghan did, she hijacked Harry and his family, and she got Harry to participate in the bashing of his family, and she headlined an interview with Oprah. You see, the royal family opened up the door to Meghan Markle, and what did she do? She went, She stabbed him in the back because she headlined that interview.
She headlined the interview. Prince Harry, a man born into one of the most powerful and heavily scrutinized institutions in human history, was reduced to a mere supporting character in his own family's public execution. Meghan was the star, Oprah was the willing facilitator, and Harry was simply the tragic prop brought out to validate the destruction. The tragic reality is that while Oprah gets to retreat to her billion-dollar estate and Meghan continues to chase Hollywood relevance, Harry is left standing in the ashes of relationships that can never, ever be rebuilt. The royal family opened their doors, and in return, they were ambushed on global television in a highly produced, heavily edited, PR-driven hit job.
And Harry and his old dumb butt sat there and watched you bad-mouth his family for money. Whatever Harry has coming to him, he deserves it.
Every single piece of public backlash, every lost Spotify deal, every plunging approval rating, and every closed door in Hollywood traces straight back to that California garden. It was the original sin of their post-royal career. They traded a lifetime of institutional loyalty for a fleeting moment of daytime television applause, completely oblivious to the fact that the public tide would eventually turn. And now that it has, the architect of that broadcast is looking for the exit.
She probably will get to the point where she has to admit that, yes, I was misled. Yes, I trusted these people and I believed them because they were my friends. And yes, I should have done more.
This is the inevitable conclusion to the Oprah Winfrey saga. The backtracking we are seeing today, the nervous slips of the tongue, the subtle shade about privacy, the attempts to reframe her most famous questions as mere requests for clarification, it is all just a warm-up. Eventually, the pressure of the unedited truth will become too much. To save the final chapter of her historic legacy, Oprah Winfrey will be forced to play her last card. She will have to look the world in the eye and admit that the Queen of Talk was conned. She will claim she was blinded by friendship, manipulated by her subjects, and misled by the very people she tried to protect. But the internet is forever, and the unedited tapes are already out there. Oprah didn't just get fooled. She sat in the editing bay, she saw the inconsistencies, and she aired the hit piece anyway because the ratings were simply too good to pass up. She sold out her journalistic integrity for a win-win PR spectacle, and now she is losing exactly what she fears most: control over her own story.